And the critical thinking is to start being aware of person's actions and how they can impact the tissue and end results. So the person will learn how to handle tissue gently, how to keep tissue moist all the time, and how to create a clean dissection. What that means is no cutting through the hair shaft. And what not to do, and that is transection and allowing graft to dry. I also take pictures of bad grafts or ugly grafts so the person can develop the awareness of what not to do by comparing. So on the left hand side you're going to see the grafts that they are not good, and so this is cut too short, there's a transected hair, this then doesn't have a hair bulb, so it should be trimmed. This one doesn't have a hair bulb. So all these grafts, for example, these two are all transected, there is no hair bulb, so there's no purpose of transplanting this piece of a tissue because it won't grow. And so the idea is to take grafts that don't look good compared to the grafts that look good so the person can start developing critical judgment. And the same thing here, another point to make here is that the grafts should not dry. If they dry, they don't grow. So I have a picture of matte look, so there's no glossy, shiny look to the tissue, which means the tissue is dried. If the assistant leaves the tissue on a dissecting board too long or on a hand without spraying it, hydrating, the tissue will dry out and the end result may be poor growth or no growth. So the tissue should not look dry, it should look shiny, and this is transected plus dried out tissue. So I wanted you to see what it looks like, what it shouldn't be done, in order to know, to guide your assistant how to do this correctly. I also did, at the end of my training, I take this image of bad grafts and then ask the assistant to look at this and tell me what they think they can make. So at the end we have results like this. The first tissue, this one is cut off, there's no hair bulb, so this cannot produce a clean graft. These are too short. If transplanted, they may sink too deep in a site, create ingrown hair or cyst. This can be cleaned up. They has to be trimmed and cleaned up to make a single hair, because this one is transected. This one has also one graft that will have two hairs. All these, this one has to be trimmed off, this one has to be trimmed off. And so, for example, this tissue, we don't even know if there is an intact hair to keep. So the idea here is to see how many grafts can we make from a tissue and make sure that all grafts look clean. So the objective of pre-patient training, so spend a week or two with your 2 weeks with your assistant where they spend some time cutting the foam, understanding the basics, practicing their hands, looking at the photographs as I showed you, so that they can start understanding what is expected of them, because that is the only way you can start with a good foundation, and then your assistant can just practice and build skills once they introduce to the live tissue. So learning, for me, my most important thing is critical thinking, because there will be hours of cutting grafts where the person has to be aware what to do and what not to do. They have to be able to self-monitor, and they have to be able to communicate with the physician at any point if they have any questions. So they have to know what is not looking right to ask you that question. So learn what to do, gently handling, keep tissue moist, and correct hair orientation. And if they traumatize, they have to know the consequences of their action. If they traumatize the graft, it will end with a result with a kinky hair, dry grafts, poor growth, and incorrect orientation. So the hair curl has a certain orientation. They have to learn to orient the hair in a proper natural look in order to achieve natural results. And so to summarize everything, the phase 1 training was designed to help assistants familiarize with the procedure, instruments. The other thing is to develop awareness and stamina, introduce critical thinking, and expedite overall training period. In other facilities, I learned it takes months and months before someone is trained We are quicker because we have this pre-patient training that accelerates the movement, hand movement in the period of asking questions, so that when assistants start working on the live tissue, they're more comfortable, and so the acquiring of their skills is much quicker. And we will be at the surgery workshop in St. Louis having specially designed practicing stations for you and your assistant to practice graft cutting and graft placement. And I think that is the most valuable part of assistant training that you can do for yourself or for your assistants, to give them this workshop opportunity to do something they can practice with their own hands. So thank you for your time.